So, Matt, the other day, Ash and I were talking, and I couldn't figure out how long I slept. Like, you know, I know I need to sleep longer, but I wanted to know how long every night I sleep. So, last night, I decided I would start sleeping with a ruler.
Stretch.
Yeah.
But it was all right.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the graveyard. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Adam.
And my name's Matt.
Now, pull up a tombstone or settle into your casket and get comfortable because this is Graveyard Tales. All right, everybody, here we are again. Matt, how you doing tonight, brother?
I'm not bad. Not bad at all.
Good. Well, before we get into it, we'll say go check out the Podbelly Network at podbelly.com. You can find a list of shows that we're happy to be associated with, and you can find some tips and tricks on podcasting. We also want to say go over to patreon.com/Graveyard Tales. You can sign up to become a patron. We've got 3 different levels that you can join, a $1, $5, and a $10. And all of our levels get a bonus episode a week. Our $5 and $10 get the ad-free audio and video versions of the episodes when we have ads. And then our $10 a month, they get our second show. We used to say new show, but it's almost 40 episodes in, Matt, so I don't think I can say new anymore. But our second show, Side Quest, where Matt and I, it's just Matt and I. We do kind of whatever we want to do, talk about whatever we want to talk about, nothing to do with Graveyard Tales. And it's not really family friendly like Graveyard Tales is.
It's ridiculous is what it is, but it's funny.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Yep. Like tonight, I've got a game that I'm going to make Matt play. So if you're into hearing us do games, all that kind of stuff, go over there, check it out, the $10 level of patreon.com/Graveyard Tales.
I'm just hoping it's not strip something.
No, that's for like episode 50.
Oh,
we got to get a little higher up before you start taking your clothes off.
I'm gonna have to bring Amanda on board for that.
Just shave or wax before you do it. It's just
full Brazilian.
Exactly. And we'll call it the full Graveyardian at that point. But Matt, that's all the housekeeping I got. So why don't you tell us, what are we talking about tonight, brother?
Okay, so tonight we're gonna talk about an island off the coast of Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
On April 15th, 1966, at around 9:45 a.m., an object with no tail and no visible means of propulsion was spotted over Catalina Island. And the reports say that it was going anywhere from 130 to 170 miles an hour.
Jeez.
So the object made no sound and was described as being silver and disc-shaped. So this was the first documented sighting of a UFO in the area, but others would follow. So tonight, Adam and I are going to dig into the mysterious UFOs of Catalina Island. And
yeah, it's going to be fun, I think.
It is. I was surprised at just how many different sightings there've been. I mean, there's been a ton. But Catalina and the area around it are widely known within the UFO community as a hotspot for not only UFOs, but USOs, unidentified submerged objects.
Right.
So, I mean, there's quite a bit going on out there.
Yeah. And I have a theory on why, but I'll wait till we get to the end of your sightings and see if anything corroborates it or debunks my theory. But I have a theory that I'll run past you. I kind of briefly mentioned it to you before we started recording, but I'll go more in depth
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So, one of the things that as I was doing this research, I got to thinking, what is it about this area that would be the pull? Is it an underwater UFO base? Is there something that about the geography of Catalina Island that would have made it more conducive?
That's where mine lies.
For these things to be there? I don't know, but Adam's going to talk about the history and the geography and even the geology of Catalina Island. So it may answer a few questions. And when we get into these sightings, we may be able to put some pieces of the puzzle together.
Right. Yeah. And mine lies in the geology of the island and that area. So we'll see what happens toward the end here.
Yeah.
But as we always say, go check our sources down at the bottom of the show notes. You can find where we found all our information. And, there's people that have dedicated their time to doing nothing but Catalina Island UFO research. And so we have to give them props because we've got to use their information, their research, since Matt and I have not been out to Catalina Island. And so down at the bottom of our show notes, you can find all those links and go over there and PDF documents that I've used and all sorts of stuff in the show notes. So now, Santa Catalina Island, or Catalina Island, is one of California's Channel Islands, and it lies southwest of Los Angeles. It's known for its wildlife, its dive sites, and Mount Orizaba, which is its highest peak. Now, it sits 22 miles off the Pacific coast of California, and it's the largest of the group of Channel Islands. It actually is about 22 miles long and 8 miles across at its widest point. So it's 22 miles off the coast, and it is 22 miles long. Nothing to do with anything, has nothing to do with
that's kind of a weird thing, isn't it?
Has nothing to do with the price of tea in China, but I like the like the correlation there. It's just interesting.
And it's almost 2,200 feet above sea level.
Right. So there's something with 22.
Yeah.
Now, Mount Orizaba that I mentioned a minute ago, like Matt said, is 2,130 feet above sea level. So almost 2,200 feet above sea level. Now, the island has pine forest on it and chamois chaparral vegetation, which, for those of us not in California, it's a member of the rose family. It's also called greasewood. So I can see why the touristy destination of Catalina Island would not want to say, we got lots of greasewood all over the place. They're like, we've got chamois chaparral all over the island.
That's like Chilean sea bass.
Right. Right.
It's really the Patagonian toothfish.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, doesn't that sound appetizing?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what it is. Would you rather eat Chilean sea bass or toothfish? Would you rather have an island covered in greasewood or chamois chaparral?
Exactly.
I know for me and you, we would find it a lot funnier to go to an island covered in greasewood.
That's right.
But, whatever.
It was so slick.
And slick and hard, and it's like a good weekend in college. Now, the greasewood, which is what I'm going to call it, is native to California, and it's a shrub-like plant. So if you look at the vegetation on Catalina Island and you see these shrubs that just seem to be everywhere, that's greasewood or chamois chaparral. If you want to be all fancy with it and bougie. Now, there are a bunch of touristy things to do on Catalina. They've got zipline eco tours, they've got bison expeditions, and you can go to the Catalina Casino. Now, on the west end of the island is the Two Harbors area, and you can go boating there. You can visit the Two Harbors General Store, and they have a bunch of diving and recreational areas. So it is 100% now a touristy area.
Okay, I'm sold. Let's go.
Right?
Sounds like a good time.
Between the greasewood and the general store, you got me, buddy.
Why not?
I'm down. Now, let's look into some of the history of the island, like who's been there, what they've done there. And a lot of this comes from the lovecatalina.com. So it will be fancied up a little bit and not sounded probably as bad as it was, but we'll look into it. At the time of first European contact in 1542, it's thought that the Native Americans living on Santa Catalina Island called their island Pimu and themselves Pimungans or Pimuvit. I can't say that, but
close enough.
Pimu is what they think they called the island then. They were excellent at boating, and they would paddle their plank canoes across the treacherous channel to go trade goods with mainland Native Americans and stuff, furs and we'll talk about it, stones, all kinds of stuff that they would trade. And so they'd paddle their canoes across this dangerous channel to go do that. So they were good and skillful on the water. Now, archaeologists excavating on a limited scale at Little Harbor on the seaward side of the island, they found evidence of increasingly complex material cultures. So these early groups of peoples exploited the resources that were there, from, abalone and other mollusks to small and large fish, marine mammals such as sea lions, and all sorts of stuff. So as you would expect, if you're living in an area, you're going to take advantage of what that area has. And the archaeologists have found evidence that the Native Americans that lived there did just that.
Well, I would imagine sea lions were probably food.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Along with, the fish and whatnot. But like that, the abalone and stuff, they use that to make jewelry and all different other things. So, yeah, I mean, they you're right. They took advantage of what they had, could feed themselves and trade for what they didn't have, which, I've learned that island life is not always what it's cracked up to be.
Right.
Because you can't have everything. Unless it's a really, really big, unless you're Australia, you can have whatever you want, along with all the poisonous stuff.
Right. Everything tries to kill you, but you got a lot of cool stuff too.
Yeah, you got great stuff.
Now, this semi-arid island, as they called it, it offered limited plant resources. So the islanders traded sea products and, in later years, the steatite for other needs. Like Matt was saying, if they needed, let's say carrots. Well, they weren't able to grow carrots on this arid island. So they'd trade their steatites and maybe seal fur or fish that they'd caught for these more vegetative goods to keep their island going. Now, the islanders made the 20-mile voyage to the mainland and the other Channel Islands in well-crafted plank canoes. Now, steatite, which I mentioned, it's an easily carvable rock that doesn't crack when you put it in the fire. And the steatite from Catalina Island has been found in both mainland and island sites throughout Southern California, which means that the original inhabitants of Catalina Island were trading this steatite with everybody for different goods. So they found out this steatite, I can carve it really easily into bowls or whatever, and then I can put it in the fire and it doesn't crack.
Right, yeah. So you can make cookware with it. Right.
Now, in 1542, the Pimungans greeted the Spanish galleon that bore the explorer Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo to their shores. This kind of began the start of the Spanish discovery, quote unquote, of the island. So after Spanish colonization, their apparently flourishing population declined drastically with the introduction of new diseases to which they had no immunity, which we see all over the place. Anytime we say, oh, hey, the Spanish founded this area, we see it in Southern America with the Aztecs and the Mayans, and, they were not prepared for the diseases that came with the Spaniards that the Spaniards already had immunity to. Just a different version of the cold would wipe them out.
Well, and I watched a little mini documentary about this a few weeks ago. And number one, the Europeans had no idea that this is what would happen. That they were going to spread these diseases that, these natives had no immunity to.
Right.
And they didn't understand immunity as it was. But the reason that the Europeans had been exposed is because the Europeans had intermingled with so many different types of people, so many different cultures, and they had all been exposed to all these different illnesses, all these different bacteria and viruses and whatnot. So not only had they built up some natural immunity to them, they were able to carry them. And people weren't just dropping dead around them because they'd all been exposed.
Right.
But these Native Americans had not been exposed to any other type of people but their own. Regardless of tribe, they were all still the same type of people.
Yeah, and from very similar areas.
Yeah, yeah. So when the Europeans arrived, they had no idea what they really were surprised that they met people at all. But they sure didn't think, hey, we're going to kill them.
Right.
Just by getting them sick.
They didn't know that they were walking biological weapons.
Right.
So,
yeah, they had no idea.
I mean, it would be the same as if we ran into an alien or something. We wouldn't be immune to any disease that they had.
Yeah.
They might not be immune to our diseases either.
Damn, can you imagine getting alien pox? Ugh.
No. Get the alien influenza.
Yeah.
I mean,
alien flu. Whoa.
You'd have to cough out your butt for 2 weeks, and who knows? I mean, maybe Matt, that comment that I just made, maybe that's what that lady was mentioning in her bad review of Graveyard Tales when she said, I don't want to hear about your farts. Maybe something like that is what she was meaning.
Maybe.
You know what, lady? If I want to talk about alien influenza farts, I'm gonna. This is our show. Anyway, I'm going to move on. This is
what we would say normally.
Right. Why? Don't judge me because I talk about alien farts.
It choked me up, you talking about them.
Now, we've seen this before in Aztec and Mayan when they had contact with the Spaniards, not just the diseases, but the fact that the Spaniards wanted to put missions in different areas. They would bring the Spanish mission. We see it in a lot of states where they landed. This happened on Catalina as well. And as the mission system kind of grew, it altered the economic landscape of Southern California. So the native people's trade and social networks were also disrupted. So as they're putting missions up and changing that landscape in California, the people from Catalina didn't have the same people to trade with, or those people didn't want those goods anymore because they had something else.
Yeah.
So it disrupted that trade network. Now in 1602, on November 24th, the eve of St. Catherine's Day, the ship of the second Spanish explorer, Sebastian Vizcaino, sighted the island. So he renamed it Santa Catalina in honor of St. Catherine. So that's where it gets the name that we know now. Now, in the aftermath of this enormous culture shock that they were going through, their society could no longer sustain itself. So by the mid 1820s, the few Pemungans that were left had migrated or were moved off the island to the mainland. So they, along with other Native American groups that were in the sphere of influence of Mission San Gabriel, came to be referred to in the European community as Gabrielinos. So all of those people became Gabrielinos. Now, little trivia that I found, there are people still living in Southern California today that have Gabrielino in their ancestry.
Oh, wow.
So that bloodline, those genetics have not died off. You know, they just, as with most everything else, intermingled with other genes, and they don't practice the same way as they used to, but they're still around. Now, the Pemungans began to feel the Spanish influence shortly after a series of missions were built along the coast, like I was saying, starting in 1769. Now, when Spain began to fear the encroachment of the Russians and the English, no mission was built on the island itself, but the Pemungans began to have other visitors. That a staunch believer in the prevailing mercantilist theory, Spain did not allow its colonies to trade with foreigners. However, sea otter were plentiful around the Channel Islands, and Russian and American sea otter hunters were eager to get their pelts. So, because they wanted the high prices that these pelts would bring them in China and stuff, they started, coming out there and hunting these sea otter. Well, by 1805, Russian, American, and Aleut otter hunters began appearing in island waters in defiance of the Spanish government. The Spaniards at the time didn't have enough ships to actually patrol their territory, so the hunters were able to camp on those Channel Islands and not be detected, and they were able to hunt these otter. Now, this says that Yankee and English merchant ships soon began to appear as well, having sailed all the way around the Cape Horn of South America laden with manufactured goods. They knew the government of New Spain did not keep the California outpost well supplied, and that the friars and townspeople would a lot of times trade leather and tallow and even some of the otter pelts for these manufactured items that they brought with them, even though it was against Spanish law. Now, when New Spain revolted from its mother country and it became Mexico in 1820, California became a province in the new country. So the Mexican government allowed trade with foreigners, but they levied a tariff on all the goods that were imported into the country. So when Mexico became Mexico, broke away from Spain, it said, we'll allow, we're not going to keep up this don't trade with foreign countries, but if you bring goods in from another country, we're going to tariff it. So they did that. But they did this because there was no property or income tax at the time. So that was how they got the money to build their country. But the Mexican government didn't have enough ships still to patrol the California coast. So what would happen is smugglers would sail in. They'd put part of their cargo on the shores at Santa Catalina. Then they would sail on in to customs. They would pay the duty on what they had on their ship. Then they'd get permission to go trade up and down the coast. Well, they did that, but first they would go back to Catalina, put all the stuff that they had offloaded back onto the ship, and continue on their way.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to pay tariffs on, at least half of what they brought in.
The first known act of tax evasion.
Exactly, pretty much. Now, there were several smugglers that set up warehouses on the island. for specifically this point. It's like, we know you're doing it. They can't catch us. So go ahead and store it in our warehouse.
Yeah.
We'll take a small fee, but you can get away with tax evasion this way.
Yeah.
Now, they were admonished and fined by Mexican authorities, but it didn't stop them. And the trade at the time was still leather and tallow and some otter skins while the supplies lasted. And they would trade those for the manufactured goods that the ships would bring in. The leather and tallow was taken back to the East Coast or to England to be turned into manufactured goods and sometimes come back around and get traded again after it was manufactured into something else.
How long does tallow last?
For a long time.
Apparently. A trip around the world.
Mm-hmm. And really it can. If stored properly, tallow can last forever if stored properly. And I'll tell you what, it's great for rough hands. If you work with wood all the time, put tallow on your hands instead of lotion. It'll keep them from cracking. But, beauty tips via Adam here. So that's all I got for you. Use tallow.
Use tallow. or coconut oil.
Yeah. Well, tallow's better than like Jergens or something. So, and it's been around a lot longer.
Oh, it just reminded me of something from a long time ago when you said Jergens. But
we'll tell that on SideQuest.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not telling it here.
Nope. Now, in 1846, Santa Catalina Island was awarded to Thomas Robbins by the Mexican governor Pio Pico, as part of a Mexican land grant. Now, in 1849, the news of the discovery of gold brought people from all over the world to California. So that's that California gold rush. Now, the landowners in the former Mexican province had been promised that under the new American government, they would retain title to their land grants, but they had to prove ownership. Cases often took years to resolve before the land commission. Now, with title in doubt, squatters often moved onto the land and laid claim by virtue of possession. On Santa Catalina Island, various squatters laid claim to different areas and began running sheep and cattle there. So several coves still bear the names of these early squatters. Ben Weston Beach, Howland's Landing, Gallagher's Beach, Johnson's Landing. All of those are squatters that set up shop there and started running sheep and cattle. Now, at the same time, in Santa Barbara on the mainland, men were buying and selling portions of that island. So the various sections were eventually purchased by James Lick of San Francisco, and his title was confirmed by patent in 1867 when it was finally decided that Robbins' grant was legal. Now,
how'd you like to be just granted an island?
Oh, dude, that would be fantastic.
You can have it. It's yours.
I would love it.
I'd have renamed it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It wouldn't still be Santa Catalina. It would be
Santa Mat.
Right. Yeah.
Santa Mat Island.
Yep.
Go away.
Santa Adamina Island. Thou shalt not pass.
Yeah.
Now, in the meantime, Catalina Island had its own mining flurry, and digs in the northern part of the state began petering out, so they would come to Catalina and try to dig up gold there. Prospectors appeared on the island in 1863. They actually found some silver in some quantity, but it was mostly on the island's west end. Now, in January of 1864, a company of Union soldiers from Fort Drum in Wilmington arrived on the island to survey its resources and suitability as an Indian reservation. So Native Americans in the northern part of the state were resisting encroachment on their lands, and the commander of the Army of the Pacific hoped to be able to remove them from their homes and place them on the island. Wouldn't that be some crap?
How nice of him.
Yeah, such a sweetheart.
Somebody come up and go like, yeah, we're going to move all of you to that island out there. Mm-hmm. Like the hell you are.
Right? You can't blame any of the Native Americans for fighting back. You come to me and tell me you're going to relocate me out of my home. I'm fighting tooth and nail.
Like, they're like, we were here first, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't just move in and take my. But the Secretary of the Interior, who had jurisdiction over Indian affairs, didn't approve that proposal. So the soldiers left the island by September the same year. So he's like, that guy was like, no, you're not going to put them all on this island. That ain't cool, man. So, but while in residence, the Army had evicted all the questionable squatters and miners, leaving only those who were well established. Well, when James Lick asserted his ownership in 1867, he evicted all the squatters and miners who declined to enter into a lease agreement with him. So for the next 20 years, Santa Catalina Island was inhabited by sheep, cattle, and just a few herders. So it was visited from time to time by fishermen, often Chinese or Japanese fishermen, and the annual cruise of sheep shearers. So it was pretty much uninhabited for a while, except by maybe a couple people. And then it was one of those islands that people would stop in, take a respite from fishing, and then move on.
Yeah.
People would come in, shave all the wild sheep. So you'd know when they were there because you'd have a bunch of bald sheep running around. And then they'd grow their hair back. They'd come back and shave them again. Now, as time passed, the coves began to be dotted with tents in the summertime because mainlanders would sail across the channel and picnic on the shores. They'd want to go there to, quote, escape the heat of California's inland valleys. So Catalina, at that point, was already becoming a vacation destination.
Yeah, in the late 1800s.
Mm-hmm. And in 1887, cool. George Shadow purchased Catalina Island from the Lick estate. He was the first with a dream to turn Catalina Island into a resort destination.
Adam, apparently lounge season is officially upon us. Were you aware of this?
I was not, but I love the sound of it.
That's right. And, you know, the way I dress, lounge season is all year long. But that's one thing about what I like to hang around the house wearing is I want it to be comfortable. Mm-hmm. I want it to be soft. I want it to be breathable. And you know what? Undies has all of that.
Heck yeah, they do.
So the company that makes your favorite underwear also makes the coziest loungewear that's perfect for the holiday season. So everything from lounge pants to hoodies to sweats, the gray sweats.
Gray sweat season.
I'm telling you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Amanda, she likes me in the gray sweat.
Yep. I already got that meme sent 2 or 3 times now. It's great.
And even onesies, which, you know, if you're a dude and onesies your thing,
they got them, man.
Have at it. You know, go for it. I look at a onesie and I'm like, I'm getting hot looking at it.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
I can't do it. But ladies, hey, like Piper, my youngest, she loves the onesies. So, you know, this is right up her alley. But MeUndies wants to remind you that it's never too early to start thinking about gift ideas. And what would be a better gift than the comfort from MeUndies? And you know, I'm checking off things that I know are going on my personal Christmas list, like the men's modal shorts.
Right.
Because I wear shorts all year round, especially around the house.
Yep.
And you know, having good, comfortable shorts that's what I want.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
I may not wear a onesie, but I'm gonna rock some pretty cool, comfy shorts, you know, while I'm, you know, sitting around and watching football or, you know, doing whatever you do this time of year.
Yep. And you can be layered up in MeUndies from the inside out, you know, from underwear all the way out. And MeUndies has a style for everyone. They've got a cut for every butt with 10 different styles that come in over 100 different colors and prints, ranging from black to dinosaurs all over. And I love their ball caddy boxer briefs. They're so comfortable and they're breathable. And yeah, I've got them in a ton of different colors. And like Matt said, we're going to start shopping for the loungewear for this year. You know, like Matt was saying, it's not just about the underwear with them. They've got a lounge collection that has joggers, hoodies, and more. And Michael loves some hoodies, so we're going to probably get him some hoodies from MeUndies too. And MeUndies' signature super soft micromodal fabric is breathable, stretchy, and oh so comfortable, making it ideal for all-day wear. And they use sustainably sourced materials and work with partners that care for their environment. If you're not happy with your first pair of MeUndies, it's on MeUndies. So if you want to kick off lounge season with MeUndies and you want to get 20% off your first order plus free shipping, you can do that at MeUndies.com/graveyard, GRAVEYARD, and enter the promo code GRAVEYARD.
Yep, that's MeUndies.com/graveyard. Using our promo code GRAVEYARD, GRAVEYARD, and get 20% off plus free shipping. MeUndies, comfort from the outside in.
So William Wrigley Jr. of Wrigley Chewing Gum fame came along in 1919. He developed Avalon as a resort island destination, and he brought the Chicago Cubs baseball team, which he owned at the time, to the island for spring training from 1921 to 1951. Now, this was with the exception of a few years during World War II, but Wrigley Gum was there.
Yeah. Now, that's a cool piece of sports trivia right there.
Yep.
To know that for 30 years, the Cubs would go to Catalina Island for spring training.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would be awesome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah.
Where do you do your spring training? Oh, an island.
Yeah.
Off California's coast.
It's really cool. I love the fact that you think of something like spring training as being a more modern event, you know. But to think they were already doing spring training baseball in 1921.
Right. Right.
And before that, I mean, so they were, you know, just finding southern locations that were warmer, especially in Chicago. I mean, baseball season starts in April. It's still cold.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they had to get, so a lot of teams had to get south, but to go all the way to an island out west. I mean,
what a vacation.
It's brilliant to me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'd never heard that before.
Right.
So that's a really cool little tidbit.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. Now let's look at the geology real quick. Now, Catlina Island was actually created over 150 million years ago. So Catalina was formed from geological events back in the Mesozoic era when dinosaurs were still walking around. Now, seismic forces lifted the land from the ocean, creating the island. The collision of two tectonic plates created a force between the northern and the Pacific plate, and the island that's there is composed of a metamorphic rock that's schist and amphibolite.
Hey, watch your mouth.
I know. That's a bunch of schist and amphibolite. Now, Catalina's metamorphic rock, which is called Catalina schist, is found nowhere else in the world, and it's observed on the west end of the island. So if you're on the west end of Catalina Island, you can see rock that is found nowhere else in the world. Now, the island itself is very, very rich in quartz. It's so rich in quartz that's the reason some of the beaches have this silvery gray sand, because it's broken up quartz pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Catalina schist, this says, took about 80 million years to form underneath the ocean's surface as part of violent tectonic plate activity. Now, 3 plates in the crust, North American, the Farallon, and the Pacific plates, are what were involved. They were responsible for many of the geological features in the Channel Islands and the United States West Coast. As the Pacific plate began to migrate eastward, it started crushing the Farallon plate against the North American plate. Because the Farallon plate was an oceanic plate and was really heavy, when they collided, it went underneath the continental North American plate, which, as we know from plate tectonics, created a subduction zone. Now, heat and pressure resulted from the two plates grinding against each other for millions of years, so it created different kinds of metamorphic rock in those areas. Some of these rocks actually formed the Rocky Mountains and the Sierra Nevadas, which I thought was fascinating. Some bundled together to form what they call a melange of rocks that became the Channel Islands. So the Farallon plate eventually broke apart under the movement of the massive Pacific plate, and it's now part of the Earth's crust near Kansas. So, yeah, I thought it was interesting because it just shows you, not that we needed to get into plate tectonics to understand UFOs, but it shows you that the rocks and the minerals found in this part of the world are different from anywhere else in the world, especially that Catalina schist. You can't find it anywhere except the Catalina Island.
So that's a really cool tie-in to getting into these UFO sightings. Because if you remember back in February of this year, we talked to Derek Hayes and David Flora about their documentary Shadows in the Desert.
Right.
Okay. The Borrego Triangle. I mean, we're talking about Southern California desert. And they were telling us about the amount of quartz that's there.
Right.
It's just everywhere. You know, everywhere you turn, there is, there's just quartz just laying there. You can see it in the rock. You can just see it laying out in the desert. It's everywhere. And of course, we know from talking to them that there's been a ton of weird, bizarre things, including UFOs, sighted around that Borrego Triangle, that area in the desert.
Right.
And Adam's telling us about all the quartz that's on Catalina Island and more UFOs. So, I mean, it's curious to me. Are they, because they're close geographically and because they're similar geologically, is there a connection there because of that quartz? And I'm stepping on what you're going to talk about later, so I'm going to stop.
No, you're fine.
I'm going to stop. And we're going to get into some of these sightings because some of them are extremely cool. All right. So, let's talk about one of the early ones. Now, remember I said the one in 1966 where they have the video. And it's the typical video you would expect. Okay, it's grainy, it was 1966. So, right. I mean, it's not perfect, but you can definitely see the object. On July 8th, 1947, that's the very same day that Roswell's Daily Record was reporting the initial flying disc story. An incident reportedly happened in the skies above Avalon. An article on the front page of that week's issue of the Catalina Islander details an alleged sighting by 3 visiting Army veterans of 6 flying discs traveling at high speed from the northeast and passing directly over Avalon before disappearing over East Peak. Now,
that's wild.
If you remember when we talked about Area 51 and the Roswell incident, that kicked off a string of sightings all over the place. Okay. People started reporting seeing these flying discs, and a lot of them were just totally dismissed.
Sure.
Because everybody thought they've just got UFO fever, and I would imagine that was a lot of it. But we're talking about Army vets who were visiting Catalina Island and saw these things.
And it happened before the fever could take hold.
Exactly. I mean, it was happening almost at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And very, very similar descriptions of these objects. So it's interesting that happened all around the same time.
Right.
And I mean, I know it's not just it's not on the other side of the world, but that's a long way away. Talking about from New Mexico to Catalina Island.
Right.
I mean, you're a state and a half and 22 miles of ocean away.
Mm-hmm.
Now, according to that story, the 6 discs appeared around 1:00 in the afternoon and flew in a formation of 2 sets of 3 and were witnessed not only by the veterans, but hundreds of other people. So Alvio Russo was one of the reported witnesses, and he was an Army Air Corps veteran who had flown 35 bombing missions over Germany with the 8th Air Force. He said he estimated the velocity of the disc at 850 miles an hour.
Jeez.
850 miles an hour?
That's crazy.
I mean, we're talking about the one in 1966, they estimated to be going 130 to 170.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are ground speeds for, some vehicles.
Right.
Okay, we're 850 miles an hour. It's amazing that they even saw it. Now, Bob Young, who is listed as a former aerial. Go ahead.
I just looked up, not to interrupt you, but I just looked up. The average cruising speed for a private jet at higher altitude is between 500 and 600 miles per hour.
Okay.
So it's faster. Some it says can reach speeds of up to 700 miles per hour or 608 knots. But even then, they're not reaching 800 plus miles an hour. Yeah.
And Russo was a pilot.
Yep.
Okay.
And these are modern day jets.
Yeah, exactly. So, he had a really good idea of being able to determine relative speed looking at an aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
He knew what it was like to be going so fast. He knew how fast he could go.
Yeah.
In a plane. So looking from the ground, he probably was one of the better people to make this estimate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Probably.
Let's talk about Bob Young. Bob Young, Jung, he was listed as being a former aerial photographer. And he agreed with Russo's estimate. And he said they were flying roughly as fast as the U.S. Navy's Tiny Tim rocket, which he had photographed numerous times for the U.S. Navy. Now, Matthew, I'm going to mispronounce this guy's name, and I practiced. Matthew Shadigas is a physicist who works with UAPX, which is an organization that investigates the existence of unidentified aerial phenomena. Now, he has also found some compelling evidence on Catalina Island. So, for example, Shadigas shows an image of the night sky with an unusual dark spot. And this was taken by a camera, that's just sitting there, centered on the sky, looking for something to happen.
Yeah.
And he shows this image and he says, now this could simply be a hole in the clouds. And you just, cause it's dark, it might not be anything, but he says it's an obvious dark spot. But if you watch it, I think he said roughly 2 minutes later, he noticed the appearance of multiple bright white pixels in the image located in the center of this quote unquote hole. Now, Shadigas claims that when the satellite images from that time were requested, none were available. Either, he said they were told either the data doesn't exist, there's no data, But if there is actual data, it's classified.
Which is crazy.
Why?
Yeah.
Why is it classified? There's no, to their knowledge, there was no reason for any of that to be classified, and they were used to being able to request satellite imagery. So,
right. Yeah.
They're being told, no, we don't have any. Why? You got all this other satellite imagery. Why not? Well, we might have it, but if we do, we're not saying we do, but if we do, it's classified.
Yeah. Which makes you think, why would you classify if there was nothing there? If it was a hole in the clouds and there was nothing there, there would be no reason to classify random satellite imagery, unless you classify all satellite imagery, but you're not, because they said they could get other satellite imagery of areas.
Yeah.
Spark something uncommon this holiday with just the right gift from Uncommon Goods. Now, Matt, the holiday season shopping is crazy. Trying to go to all these different stores and pick just the right gift for somebody and give them that gift that they'll say, that is exactly what I wanted. Well, you can do that at Uncommon Goods and not have to leave your house, which is what I've done the past couple years, because they scour the globe for original, handmade, absolutely remarkable items. And somehow they know exactly the perfect gift for every single person that you know. Now, just as an example, all right, Ashley loves puzzles and putting stuff together. So last couple years, I've gotten her a puzzle from there. Last year, I got her one that was personalized with our names in it. And then this year, I found her a 3-dimensional guitar puzzle. And I've already given this to her, so like if she hears it, it's not going to ruin the holiday surprise, because I got other stuff coming for her in that sense. But they also had, she loves olives, and they had a variety pack of different types of olives: green, black, Kalamata, stuffed with pepper, stuffed with garlic. So they have everything from kitchenware to barware to food to puzzles and games and everything. Every time I give her something from Uncommon Goods, she loves it because it's unique and it's not something that I can just go find in a store somewhere.
Yeah. Absolutely some of the coolest things that you can find as gifts. And when you shop Uncommon Goods, you're supporting artists and small independent businesses. Many of their handcrafted products are made in small batches, so shop now before they sell out for the holiday season. Uncommon Goods looks for products that are high quality, unique, and often handmade or made in the U.S. They have the most meaningful, out-of-the-ordinary gifts anywhere. They even have gifts you can personalize. So from holiday host and hostess gifts to the coolest finds for kids to hits for everyone from book lovers to diehard sports fans, Uncommon Goods has something for everyone, not the same old selections you could just find anywhere. And with every purchase you make at Uncommon Goods, they give $1 back to a nonprofit partner of your choice. They've donated more than $3 million to date.
That's great.
Yeah. So if you have that person that you just want to give the coolest gift, or that one it's hard to find that just the right Christmas present, go to Uncommon Goods and you can get 15% off your next gift at uncommongoods.com/great. That's GRAVE.
That's right. That's uncommongoods.com/GRAVE for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods. We're all out of the ordinary. So,
well, I mean, this was when you listen to Shadaga's talk, it's obvious that this was a shock to them.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean? I mean, it was like this was something they had done before.
Mm-hmm.
So he set about to try to explain what he could be seeing. Now, first, he said the hole could be a droplet of water on the lens of the camera. Very simple, easy explanation. But he says that only explained the hole. It doesn't explain the lights.
Right.
You know, where are the lights coming from? Now, second, he said it could have been a reflection of city lights. But he said, you know, when you look at that closer, it doesn't hold up either, because why would the lights be visible at one moment and not the other?
Mm-hmm.
You know, he obviously has an image of just the hole and no lights inside. And then 2 minutes later, the lights appear. If that was a reflection, they would have already been there.
Yeah. They'd been there the whole time.
Yeah. And thirdly, he said there was the possibility that this was what is called a fall streak hole, which is a hole in the clouds caused by an aircraft flying through it. Okay. So an aircraft flies through a cloud and it leaves a hole. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So if that was the case, which kind of makes sense, where was the aircraft? So they went to the FAA, and they went to some other organizations that would monitor air traffic. And the FAA said there was no aircraft in that area at that time. So he finally just said, well, maybe it was a hole in the clouds and the lights were just stars in the sky that were now visible because of the hole. But they even debunked that theory because they went and looked at the star charts and said that the lights don't match up with any of the star patterns. So you're left with, it's got to be something else. I mean, it's got to be something else. Nothing else fits. We've come up with everything we think it could possibly be, and we have reasons that it's not that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, I appreciate that because, you know, in my excitement, I would immediately want to go, look at that. That's got to be some kind of UFO activity. I wouldn't have known all these ways to try to debunk what I'm seeing. Right.
And I think that's great that they did that, because like you're saying, I wouldn't think of looking at star charts. I'd think, oh, maybe they were stars, but I wouldn't know I could go look at star charts and
determine if they were really stars.
Yeah.
I mean, now it blows me away that they have all that mapped anyway, that at any point on the earth, if you're pointing a telescope this direction, these are the stars that you're going to see.
Right.
You know, and they do that. So, I mean, that's how you can get these cool, fancy programmable telescopes where you punch it all in. I saw one you Bluetooth to your phone.
Oh, that's cool.
And you can see the image on your phone. You can tell it what you want to look at, and it'll move the telescope to see, you know, if you're in a region where you could see whatever it is you're asking, you know. And I'm like, man, I mean, that's what somebody could have on their back deck. I mean, we're not even talking about something like the Naval Observatory. I mean, you know, we're talking about something you could order from Amazon. You know, it's impressive now. So let's look at another sighting, Adam. May of 2007. Okay. A fisherman named Brad Castle had a frightening USO experience. Now, Brad is a seasoned fisherman, and he explains that he has seen all sorts of weird stuff while out on the water. I can only imagine.
Oh, yeah.
But he says nothing compared to this experience. He said he and his partner were just a few miles off the coast of Catalina when suddenly the ocean lit up from underneath him. So Castle describes the light as being so bright that it took your breath away. He said his partner actually screamed when it happened. Okay. The light, he says, stretched 100 yards in every direction from the boat. So, I mean, they were essentially on top of it. And, you know, they were blinded. He said, you couldn't look down into the water. It was too bright. But the pair felt their boat kind of being pulled along in the water, kind of toward the light or toward the center of it. And so in the interview I'm watching, they said, so did you start to think you weren't going to survive this? And he was like, oh, yeah. You know, we thought, this is it. We're going to die. This is it. So, you know, being afraid, Brad gunned the engine in the opposite direction. And he said, just as suddenly as the light appeared, it was gone. And it left both men just kind of shocked and disoriented. I mean, what in the hell could that have been? I mean, seriously. I mean, he talks about it. He said, listen, I've seen bioluminescence. He said, I've seen phosphorus in the water. He's like, I understand about lights and things that you see in the water. Right. He said, this was not it. You know, I've never seen anything this bright in my life. And plus to be that wide, I mean, 100 yards in every direction. I mean, that's huge. What in the world were they floating on top of?
Yeah. And like, if you get bioluminescent, like if somebody's going to say, oh, that was bioluminescent algae, it happens. Go, even if you've not seen it in person, go look at videos of bioluminescent algae in the ocean.
Yeah.
It's a faint blue.
Yeah. It's a glow.
Yeah. It's legitimately just a faint blue glow that you see kind of in the water. Mm-hmm. It doesn't look like a light coming up from below and blinding you.
Yeah. Well, think about it like, well, you know what something looks like when it glows in the dark. Mm-hmm. It's not producing light. You know, it is, well, I guess bioluminescence, it's producing light, but it's in such a way that it lights up what it is. Okay. Mm-hmm. You're not going to take some bioluminescent plankton or algae and read a book by it.
Right.
Okay. This was obviously producing a ton of light, so bright that they couldn't look at it.
Mm-hmm. Which is crazy.
I've never heard of any living thing being able to produce that much light.
No.
I mean, this is like one of those flashlights you order on the TikTok shop. You know, it's like, look at this. You know, he shots it. You know, it's like he's almost like it's X-ray. You know, it's so damn bright.
He goes 4 neighborhoods away.
He's putting out street lights with it. You know, that's what they were looking at underneath the boat coming up from the water. I mean, that freaked him out big time. And
it freaked me out.
It took Brad Castle a long time before he was willing to talk about this publicly.
And probably a long time before he wanted to get back on the boat, too.
Yeah. But he also says that there's a lot of people on Catalina Island that have had weird experiences like this, you know, with either UFOs or USOs. Mm-hmm. And they are just, in a lot of cases, not willing to talk openly about it because they don't want people to think they're nuts. Sure. Yeah. But one other Catalina resident was willing to talk about it, and her name is Kathleen Hill. She is a longtime resident of Catalina Island. Now, Kathleen reports that she's had multiple experiences in the water and in the skies above Catalina Island. So in October of 2008, Kathleen says that one evening after her and her children had finished dinner, they noticed 3 orange lights in the sky in a triangular shape. So Kathleen says the lights were visible for at least 50 minutes. 50.
That's
50
wild.
minutes, almost an hour, which is absurd when we're talking about, any kind of UFO activity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But she said they never moved. They were just there. And she said then suddenly, after that period of time, they just were gone. Like someone turned a switch.
That's weird.
They didn't fly away.
Yeah, they
just shut
stopped.
off. Yeah.
Huh.
So Miss Hill says the lights appeared off and on for years until she decided she was going to try and gather some evidence of their behavior. So in 2012, okay, this is 4 years she's been seeing these things. In 2012, she set up a camera and she caught the 3 orange lights on video. Now, in her video, you can see the lights in a triangular formation. While watching, the lights change from circles to more of a semicircular shape. So Kathleen describes it as the lights seem to pitch or tilt. So if you imagine you've got a disc object that's producing a round light and it angles, the light is going to change. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to become more elliptical. And that's kind of what this did. It was like I said, a round light being shifted to being partially flat. She pans the camera while recording to give some perspective and shows a lighted house on the ground. But when she pans back, which it's just a few seconds, the lights were gone. And that caused some people to speculate that if they were some sort of craft, could the pitch had been them preparing to dive into the water.
Yeah.
So, we've got bright lights in the water. Now we've got lights in the sky. And so you kind of do the math and you're thinking maybe these lights are diving into the water and that's why they don't seem to fly away, because they just dive straight down. Now, this one is interesting as well. It was late afternoon, December 29th, 1968. And an attorney, Paul Aleon, who's a resident of Palos Verdes, California, witnessed strange lights over the Santa Catalina Channel. Now, according to Aleon, the lights flew in formation and then unexpectedly stopped just above the surface of the water. And so he says, and this is a quote, "I looked up and on the horizon, I saw a set of lights that were unlike any other lights I'd ever seen before. It started to tilt and list." He said it got to about the 11 o'clock position and then went to the 5 o'clock position, and it wasn't moving. He said, "I really, to this day, can't tell you what it was." So Aleon says that he went into his garage and he got a walkie-talkie thinking, I'm going to try and talk to this thing. But what happened was he picked up a ship-to-shore transmission on his walkie-talkie.
Really?
He says, the gentleman on the transmission said, this is what he said, that what he heard. He said, "That's right, Bob. I don't know what the hell it is. It's about 200 yards off my bow, and it's starting to tilt." And then the voice started to go on and explain exactly what it was that he was seeing. And it turns out that was exactly the same thing that Paul Aleon was seeing. And so essentially what he said, it was like a line of these lights in series. And the line would tilt back and forth between 11 o'clock and 5 o'clock. Okay. But it wasn't moving around. It was just kind of hovering in the sky, tilting back and forth. So Aleon says the next night, the news talked about all the phone calls they had gotten the night before about these lights. So Alien says there had to have been more than just a few crackpots calling in for the news to talk about it. He said there must have been dozens or even hundreds that witnessed this that were calling in for the news to run a story on it. You don't get a couple of people making calls going, I'm seeing funny lights in the sky, and the news runs a story. Okay, so they must have gotten a ton of calls. So that means there were loads of witnesses that saw this. Now, this is where it's funny. The answer the news gave was that it was a couple of crazy college kids that were fooling around with a weather balloon. What?
God.
I mean, seriously. We're talking about 1968. And some college-age kids get their hands on a weather balloon. And not only that, they're able to get this thing up in the air and get it to hover and tilt at a time where, there was no drones.
Yeah.
No remote control, stuff like that you could make hover,
Well, and why does it always go back to weather balloon with stuff like that? You remember that's what, the Area 51 was claimed
weather
to be.
Weather balloon.
And it's always weather balloon. And it's like you said, how are they making it do the things that it's doing? The turn, the pitch, the hover in one area. Don't you think you would see a string on this stupid thing?
Yeah.
It's dumb.
It is. And I'll tell you this. I can remember being a kid and watching shows about UFOs, and just being fascinated, but always hearing this weather balloon story. Mm-hmm. So things I heard as a kid, two things that I believed as an adult that I would experience way more than I do. Number one, quicksand is not really
absolutely
something that I am worried about now. But as a child, I thought, boy, any given moment, I'm going to walk into some damn quicksand.
Yeah.
And the two is I felt like I should be able to walk outside and look up and see a weather balloon because apparently they were everywhere. I've never seen a weather balloon in person ever.
No, me either. And that's the thing. If they were common enough to where college students could get their hand on them and just play with them.
Yeah.
Don't you think that my dumb butt would have seen one in person in 40 years?
Or known someone.
Yeah,
I've
known
never
someone
met
with one.
anyone that's seen one.
Yeah.
Not, everybody's like, well, I've seen one in a picture. Yeah, so have I, but I've never seen one in reality.
Yeah. And I've never had a friend say, hey, we smuggled a weather balloon out and me and Filbert went out to the field and flew it a while.
Yeah.
And then it got away from us. And guess what? Next day, there was UFO reports.
Uh-huh. I can see that happening like once.
Yeah, sure.
But for all of these to be chalked up to weather balloon,
yeah, it can't all be weather balloon.
That is the go away, don't ask any more questions answer.
Mm-hmm.
It is exactly what it is. Somebody that they were told this is what you're going to tell them tonight.
Yeah. Oh no, it was an owl.
Yeah. Now, according to the Long Beach Independent, on January 23rd, 1968, Avalon Sheriff's Deputy Richard Callan witnessed a, quote, mysterious, unidentified floating object that had, quote, lights in its portals. And then the object exploded.
Exploded?
Yeah. And according to the newspaper, quote, a bright light illuminated waters around the object, and minutes later, a series of flares were shot into the air from the object. What on earth was
Yeah.
that.
What just happened to that thing?
Yeah. I mean, okay, so it explodes and it falls into the water with this bright light, and then flares shoot out from it into the air.
Yeah. Distress signal?
I don't know. Yeah. I've never seen anything like that. I've never even heard of anything like that.
No.
So, I mean, there's not even a debunking for that one.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's not like,
it's just like, what?
Military helicopter during training crashed.
Yeah.
And no, because they're not going to shoot flares out of the water up into the sky. Multiple. They might shoot a flare gun. Hey, here I am, help me. But.
And, the argument may be, oh, well, the military isn't going to tell you that one of their helicopters crashed. I'm like, yeah, they would.
Mm-hmm.
If they thought the other belief was UFO.
Oh, yeah.
They would absolutely tell you one of our helicopters crashed.
Yeah, and we hear stories a lot of 2 soldiers killed in training exercise when helicopter crashed.
Yeah.
We hear it a lot.
Yeah, nothing like that for this particular report.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, not only was this a law enforcement agent, this was the sheriff's deputy. Okay? In a small island community.
Yeah.
So I guarantee you everybody knew this guy, or just about everybody did. So for him to say it, boy, he's sticking his neck out.
Sure.
To go, now he was not saying I saw a UFO, but he definitely said I saw something that I couldn't explain.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to believe that, Richard Callen, he knows what he saw. He doesn't know what it was, but it was definitely strange.
Yeah.
And there's no explanation for what it was. So another story that swept the media was reported by the Los Angeles Times on March 23rd, 1977. Now, Sheriff Sergeant Vincent Rupp received dozens of, quote, UFO sightings reported from Sacramento, Salinas, Los Angeles, Orange County, and March Air Force Base between 3:45 and 4 a.m. Now, according to the paper, these witnesses included military personnel from March Air Force Base and several law enforcement officers around Los Angeles. Now, there was one witness named Mark Hogan who was a runway worker at LAX. And he said, quote, the teardrop or tin can shaped lights swept in a high speed from the direction of Santa Catalina Island around 3:30 a.m. In my opinion, they weren't natural. So a military spokesperson at March Air Force Base confirmed that the objects had, in fact, been seen from the base and said, quote, there has been no rocket or missile testings which could have accounted for the lights. The objects did not show up on any radar readings. So
the fact that they didn't show up is crazy.
Yeah. So the Air Force Base is confirming that they did not have any missiles or anything like that being tested in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And that, yes, there were plenty of them that were witnessed, but they didn't show up on radar.
Right. That's weird.
So that's even more, that makes you wonder, what was it, even a solid object, or was it an object that was able to cloak itself?
Right.
From radar. You don't know.
Right.
But that's really, really bizarre. And again, we've got people that are credible witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
People at an Air Force base, law enforcement officers, and a worker at LAX. They're going to be looking. I mean, this could affect air traffic.
Sure.
So they're going to be paying attention to this.
And they've seen lights in the sky.
Oh, yeah.
They see it all the time with planes, so they know what a plane looks like.
Exactly. And they also know what something looks like that may interfere with a plane.
Mm-hmm.
And none of that. So you just kind of like left with what else could this possibly be?
Right.
Now, the last sighting we're going to talk about tonight was by David Russo, who is a retired attorney, and he reportedly witnessed bright lights over the channel on August 4th, 2006. He said he was walking along the shoreline late at night, about 11:35, and a bright light off to the west out near San Pedro caught his eye. And he said it was moving toward the water at a very steep angle. He said it got to a point, maybe about half a mile, and it just stopped right over the water. Maybe 10, 15, 20 feet above the water, it just stopped. Which, that's not typical.
You shouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah. And you would think, okay, so what do we know in 2006 that would have lights, be in the air, and would be able to hover? Again, this is pre anybody could have a drone time.
Right.
So helicopter, but do helicopters dive at a very steep angle? I don't, do they? I've never seen one do that.
Not just normally. I mean, that's evasive maneuvers or something during a war.
Yeah.
They will dive like that, but
to get that close to the water and then just hover, I don't know. But this is what he said he saw, which makes you think this is not a helicopter. He said a shorter side had 3 or 4 blue lights on it. And then there was a longer side that seemed to have anywhere from 6 to 8 blue lights. He said it rotated and did this for about 30 to 45 seconds. Then the blue lights went off and it just stopped and it was gone. And he said then he saw it move out towards Catalina Island. He said in less than a second, it did all of this. The light stopped rotating and then it just took off towards Catalina in about a second. Faster than what a helicopter would do.
Yeah, no.
And Russo says that, honestly, he would rather have not seen it. Because he said, now there's this little piece in the back of my head that's always wondering and thinking, what the heck was that?
Right.
And he says, I doubt I'll ever know. And you know what? That's one aspect of this that I've never really considered, because I've not ever seen what I would think could potentially be a UFO. Amanda has. My dad has. But I've not. And so I've never really put my mind to thinking, what would I do? If I saw something like that I couldn't explain and may not ever figure out what the heck it actually was. I mean, that I can understand why he says, I wish I had never seen this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's something that bugs you. I mean, it just digs at you. You're just like, man, remember that thing? And look, I've seen some crazy stuff, but I've not ever seen anything that I've been like, I may never, ever know what that was.
Yeah.
They would just eat at me for years.
That may have come from another planet.
Yeah.
And who's going to believe me?
So, numerous sightings over a long period of time from credible witnesses, all in this region of Catalina Island to Southern California. And what we said, Catalina Island sits about 22 miles, off the coast of Southern California. And, so it just seems like there's an awful lot of traffic, not only in the sky, but under the water. Now, It's interesting because we've already talked about this story in the past, but the naval Tic Tac video that was like 2004.
I think so. Yeah.
It happened in this area as well. Now, I can't say for a fact that it was right here around Catalina Island, but it was definitely off the coast of Southern California. And so if you're unfamiliar with that, the short and dirty version of it is they see this, these two pilots and two I think weapons experts, two planes, two people in each plane, all four witnessed this thing flying that looked like a giant Tic Tac, and then watched it dive into the water and never change speed. Stayed under the water, and there was no slowdown. So it just boom and kept going at the same speed. And then that thing was rediscovered like something like 60 miles away in just a few seconds.
Yeah, and what they called their cat point. So where they were going to end their mission, that thing already knew to go there. So how did it know that?
So all this activity, Adam, what you've got a theory of why it's here.
I do.
So lay it on us.
All right. So we talked about the geology of Catalina Island in that area. And we know by what archaeologists, geologists have found that there are stones there that aren't found anywhere else in the world. The Catalina schist, and then the abundance of quartz. Okay. So we know that we use quartz in computers, watches, all kinds of electronics. It can hold a charge, even though it's small, it can hold a charge. Some say that it can hold memory like a thumb drive can, so it can hold some type of information. So we use it all the time. Now, it's abundant on Earth. But when you look it up, quartz are considered relatively rare in the wider universe because it takes water and moderate temperatures to create quartz. So you don't find moderate temperatures and an abundance of water
anywhere else.
Hardly anywhere else in the universe. So if these are aliens from another planet or neighboring universe or something, could they have figured out the same thing with quartz? And they need quartz for their ships, their technology, or they're like, hey, I'm going to try this quartz and see what it does. And so they show up around all these places to either mine it, or because there's so many quartz there, is there some type of underwater base that they're using the quartz for some purpose?
Right.
To me, if these are actual UFOs from a species not of Earth, then to me, it has to have something to do with the quartz and the geology of that area. Being that quartz, unlike diamonds, okay, diamonds are not as rare as the jewelry companies would have you believe.
You're right.
There's entire planets that are nothing but diamonds, and it rains diamonds on some planets. It doesn't take specific conditions like it does with quartz to create diamonds. I mean, it does, but it's not the
it's
conditions.
Mainly pressure.
Yeah, pressure and carbon, which we know carbon is abundant within the universe. Pressure is abundant within the universe. So you can get diamonds more regularly. What should be the expensive, crazy thing is quartz, because it's not found many other places, if anywhere, besides Earth. So that's one of those minerals that we have that a lot of other planets in the universe would not. So I think if it if it's legit, if it's legitimately something from outside our sphere, then it has something to do with the rare quartz mineral.
Yeah. I'd even go a step further, Adam, and I would say, if this is, a different life form, species, whatever, what if they've been here a really, really long time?
Mm-hmm.
They predate modern humanity.
That's highly probable.
What if the quartz, what if the quartz is a byproduct of something they're working on or they're doing, something they do, and if it's underwater and these ships that we see or these objects, and then you look and you see this abundance of quartz in the desert, and
so you're switching the timeline. Yeah, it's not quartz first, then
it's
UFOs. It's UFOs that create the quartz.
Yeah, and that's why it's so abundant in these areas where we see a lot of UFO activity. That it's a byproduct. I mean, there's no way to know. I think either theory is as good as one. But I'm with you on the fact that I think the quartz may be a key to this.
Yeah, it's tied to it somehow.
Yeah, and that's just, I mean, when you look at all these sightings, there is, at least in my opinion, there is no way that you can dismiss all of them.
Right.
There's no way you can just go and debunk every single one as being a natural phenomenon or, a misidentified aircraft or something. You just can't. There's too many.
Right.
There's way too many. Somebody is seeing something. Okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's alien, but it is definitely something that we do not understand.
Right.
We are not grasping the whole picture here. Either we're not supposed to, or, it's not time for us to know that yet.
Right.
But we could put on our tinfoil hats and we could say, the government knows exactly what's going on. But I don't know. I think the government may have some evidence, but they look at it much like we do. We don't fully understand what this is. We want to understand. We're going to study the daylights out of it.
Yep.
But we're not going to share that with everybody because we don't want to, just fuel these fires any more than we already have.
Yeah. And like we've said with a lot of other things, I don't have the confidence that our government as a whole is smart enough to keep that a secret.
Yeah.
If they knew that and multiple people within the government knew it, it would have leaked. We know exactly what's going on. I mean, look at the whistleblowers we've got now. If we knew exactly what it was, they'd be blowing that whistle all over the place.
Exactly.
So I think you're right, and we don't know they might know more, but they don't know the full extent of it either. So I think they're kind of looking into it too as, what the heck is going on? And,
if you listen to like Dr. Stephen Greer, they know a hell of a lot more than they're willing to share. I don't know. But, he's talked to so many whistleblowers, it really makes you curious. And then you see something like all of these reports from around Catalina Island, and it just makes you go, well, something's going on. We may not know what it is, but something is definitely happening over there.
Yep.
But what do you guys think? Are we, are Adam and I thinking in the right direction? Is this kind of, are we seeing more and more evidence of either UFOs, USOs, either an advanced species or an alien species? what do you think it could be? And the best place to tell us about your thoughts and your opinions on this is in our Facebook group. It's called The Graveyard. You can get in there and share your ideas, share your thoughts on this show and any other show we've done. Maybe you've got some insight we haven't considered. We would love to hear it. And that's a really good place to let all the Graveyard members, see and chime in, and nobody's going to make fun of you. We're not going to, we just want to hear these great stories. Don't forget to check out our website, which is graveyardpodcast.com. And there you can purchase Graveyard Tales merchandise. You can listen to the show and you can become a patron. And thank you to everyone who has donated to the show. It's really helping Adam and I keep things going at a level that, we're proud of and that we know our listeners expect.
Yep.
All right, man. This was a fun one. We knew it would be going in.
Yep. I love this kind of topic. It's always fun.
Until next time, we'll save you a seat in the graveyard.
See you soon.